Okay, folks, let's get this show on the road. This is the UK House Price Index, but we're specifically focusing on Scotland and also on Fife in itself. This is quite revealing. What you think is happening right now in the housing market, as the media goes, isn't necessarily what's actually happening in the housing market right now. I think you'll be pleasant. Well, I think you'll be really surprised actually, because I was really surprised when I looked and drilled down at the numbers. So just bear with me while we look at some numbers here. Okay, so let's get up a wee chart here. And we'll bring up the average house price. So the average house price in Scotland is 192,518 pounds. That means year on year, the Scottish house prices have moved up 3.2%. The monthly price change in Scotland was up 3%, in a month. The index figure for Scotland was 142.7. Now, most estimates in the recent months of provisional are likely to be updated. You have to bear that in mind as more data is incorporated into this index, and it does revise it to a degree. But this is actually the headline statistics. And when you look at it month by month, this is the same sort of way they calculate this every single time. So this is actually really revealing in terms of everything. So the UK economic think tank, in other words, the House Price Index, which is the land registry, actually looks at this, and their economic statement actually said average house price in Scotland raised by 3.2% in the 12 months to May 2023. This was up 1.8% the 12 months to April 2023, and faster than the UK average house price inflation of 1.9% in the 12 months to May 2023. On a seasonally adjusted basis, the average house price in Scotland increased by 3%. They take out other factors which would skew it so that you're comparing apples with apples and like with like. And then they went on also to say between seasonal adjusted 3% between April 2023 and May 2023, compared with the increase of 1.6% during the same period 12 months ago. On a seasonal adjusted basis, the average house price in Scotland increased by 2.2% to April from April 2023 and May 2023. Okay, so what does this mean actually when we compare provisional UK HPI volume estimates for March as well? And I'm going to drill into the March figures because we get the volume figures for March, but we get the data in terms of prices for up to May itself. They can only get the volumes later on, and they have to go a couple of months back because it takes a wee while to get the stuff through from the solicitors to the land registry itself. So it's still a good benchmark because it compares like with like, and it's the way it's been calculated all the time. So it's not changed. So the good thing is like with like. In Scotland, detached houses showed the highest annual percentage change out of all the property types, increasing by 4.1% in the 12 months to May 2023 to £345,000 on average in Scotland. Semi-detached houses showed the slowest annual price change, which increased by 1.9% in the 12 months to May 2023 to an average price of £202. Now, see the differential there? A detached house on average in Scotland is 345,000. A semi-detached is an average of 202,000. There's about 143,000 differential between the two of them, between a semi-detached and a detached. So what are you going to go for if your budget's kind of tight? You're probably going to settle for the semi-detached because it is extremely affordable in comparison. The highest annual percentage change, this was actually quite surprising, was East Lothian, where the average house prices increased by 16.1% in the 12 months to May 2023 to 339,000. The average annual percentage change, the lowest annual percentage change actually on average was West Dunbartonshire, where the average house price change decreased in West Dunbartonshire by 4% in the 12 months to May 2023 to 130,000. West Dunbartonshire must be extremely affordable in comparison. All other indicators in the housing market, which typically fluctuate from month to month, so it's important not to put too much weight on this 1 month set of house price data, but I've got quite an important one. Let's talk about the annual house price change. This is actually, going to cover this first. This is the annual house price change. Let's get this up on the screen. Okay, annual house price change year on year. You can see straight away there where this goes up. So we've got May 2019, November, May, November 21, 22, 23, and then so on and so forth. You can see how all the house price change went up, and then it went down to November 2022. Liz Truss's budget, and then all of a sudden it started to increase again. Sorry, what did you just say? It started to increase again. House prices starting to increase again. Let's see that. That's average house price change over the last 5 years. So in Scotland, average house prices increased by 3.2%, as I said before, up from the 1.8% in the 12 months to April 2023, which was last month. The annual house price change by a local authority for Scotland is quite an interesting one when you look at that. The low numbers of sales transactions in some areas and sales transactions some local authorities, such as Orkneys, actually can lead to the volatility of the series. But let me just share this first graph. Now, this is a sneak peek. You'll never see this anywhere else just now, because it is. We're just working on this data right now, but this is the price per square foot, real time, actually what's happening in the market on the websites right now. And it's the price per square foot exchanged, in other words, keys handed over, versus the price per square foot actually now actually sold and under offer, subject to concluded missives. In other words, it's going through right now. Look at this, and I'll quickly move from this. So I'm going to talk about this quickly, and I'm moving on. Look at that. There's the red line. See the red line? That's the sold subject to concluded missives. That's what's happening right now in the market. There's the exchange. Actually, that's what's keys handed over right now. See the exchange keys handed over, and look at where the boom is. And everything that's coming through right now, you can see right there at the top of there, right that top of that red, there's a boom currently happening in the market. Now, how is that? How is that entirely possible? So the reason that this is entirely possible is primarily due to mortgage availability is still there. So mortgage availability is still there in the marketplace. The banks are still being more creative with their lending. Everybody was stress tested prior to this from 2014. So we were all stress tested for the increase in base rates. So a lot of people are actually still okay. They just need to budget a bit better in order to be able to afford the mortgage rate they'll be probably coming into right now. I mean, the fear is my mortgage is going to increase maybe 2 or 3 times, but the reality is you've been stress tested at that rate anyway. So you possibly have disposable income. I wouldn't say disposable, but it's tied up somewhere else and it's getting utilized on somewhere else right now. It can be reallocated to the budget for your mortgage now. So it is entirely possible that is the case for most people. For other people, you need to rein it in right now. You need to speak to your bank right now. You can potentially get 6-month holidays as before. That's all still in place from the credit crunch. Nobody's ever told anybody about that. You could maybe get capital repayment holiday. In other words, you can change the interest only and just pay the interest every month to alleviate your cash flow position for a certain period of time. You need to speak to your bank about it beforehand in order to give you some leeway there. So while we can make efforts to account for the volatility, the change in price in these local levels can be influenced by the type and the number of properties sold in any given period. So just let me drill in for Fife. Look at Fife. Look where Fife is. Now, I talked about this yesterday. Look at where Fife is. Fife is 4.8% increase. So year on year, Fife is 4.8%. So everybody was holding off last year, and the fact that I'm not going to buy just now, because I said it last year, you need to get buying now, because if this price goes up, you're going to get caught out by it. And lo and behold, year on year, the price is going up 5%. So effectively, for every £100,000 of the property you were about to buy, you're now going to have to pay another £5,000 than you were last year. And that will probably continue, because Fife is still extremely affordable at 170,000 price point on average. Think about this. Everybody up to, this is an average, is a midpoint. So everybody up to 170,000, half of the housing market, according to this, is below 170,000. So half of the market is actually very buoyant because it's very affordable, because there's still a mini boom and up to the 250,000 mark. So you've got everybody up to 170,000, which is the average price point, which is really affordable in comparison. And then you've got everybody just up to the 250,000 to add on to that. So the majority of people in Fife or majority of Fife houses that are available for sale can actually still be very affordable in comparison, and therefore this will continue to go. This will probably continue to go month on month. We don't know what's going to happen. Probably in the next 3 or 4 months, it's probably going to happen. Keep continuing like that, especially when we see a graph like this, where what's currently exchanging right now is a lot higher than what's actually just over the line previously. Because just over the line in exchange that's actually been a transaction. It's probably been agreed maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, maybe even 6 months ago, and that's why it's just getting over the line. But these are actually real time coming through, and they're a lot higher, these numbers. So that's why you just have to be aware of that. So if you are looking for a house right now and you think you should hold off, do not hold off. That's my personal advice. If you can afford it, just go for it, because you'll be staying in there for quite a period of time if you are, and therefore over the period of the next 5 to 10 years, if that is the case, then this will level itself all out anyway, and it'll be neither here nor there. I'll give you a classic example of this. So when I bought my house, it was just before the credit crunch happened, and I bought it for 250,000. I spent the best part of 110,000 doing it up, and therefore it cost 360,000 overall. Credit crunch came along, wiped it out, and went down to 300,000. I am still in my house today, and it's now worth 450,000. So it levels itself out the longer you stay in the property. Property always goes up in value, and it will continue to go up in value right now as banks are becoming more and more creative in how to lend and how to make it more affordable on a monthly basis for most people to buy. Remember, your bank is in the business of selling you a loan or a mortgage. They're not in the business of getting you the best savings rates, because they're taking your money when you put it in the bank and they're lending it out in fractional lending to 10 other people. That's how they do it. That's called fractional lending. And that's why banks stay in business, because they're there to make a profit on the money you invest into their bank. Well, you don't invest, you just put it in the savings account and probably get near enough no return at all. But they're loaning your money out to people like mortgage holders and also small business owners. And then they're making money on the money that you've actually put into your account. So that's how they make their money. So they will continue to look at more creative ways in order to lend for homes. And that was one of the main factors driving behind the credit crunch, was the fact of the availability of finance. If that keeps flowing, then we'll keep going. Another one to think about, another statistic here, is UK unemployment levels are still at a record low. There's more people than work than ever before. There's more money coming in to all the households. Maybe the cost of living crisis a wee bit has squeezed everybody in terms of their budgets, but there's still more money than there was all these years ago when unemployment levels were around about 5 and 6%. So there's more people employed, therefore more people generating money, therefore more people generating tax, therefore more money going into the investment for the government for services and improvements. Okay, enough about the economic lessons. Let's jump back to this. Okay, so as I said, in the Fife area, as you'll see there, and the average house price is now £170,117, and it's gone up 4.8% year on year, and that's the average price point. When we look and drill down in here, let's just talk about where we are with this. Let's look at the average house price by local authority to see how hot this market, in terms of prices, and see where we are in comparison. So here it is in a graph in order to ascertain this. Now, you can see here over 230,000 is in the whole of Scotland. This is the high point, 230,000 or greater. All the reds, Perthshire, you've got the Edinburgh as well, and then you've got, as it goes lukewarm, it's the Highlands and Islands, it's the Aberdeenshire area, not Aberdeen city centre, because that's on its knees. You've got again, as you go down the colours, and you've got the midpoint. Now the midpoint's here, 150,000 to 169,000. You're just basically easing into the 170,000 with Fife. So Fife is still very affordable in comparison to the rest of the UK, and yet the average price, or the average salary, sorry, in the Scotland and average salary in Fife are almost similar. So my point out of that is it's more affordable to buy in Fife and live in Fife and work in Fife, especially if you work remotely, than it is actually to live in somewhere like Perthshire and Edinburgh, which will cost a lot more money to live in. So the Land Registry goes on to say in May 2023, the most expensive area to purchase was East Lothian. The average price was 339,000, in contrast to the cheapest area to purchase a property was Inverclyde, where the average price was 123,000, which is round about here in this area. So let's look at the semi-detached then. Let's break that down into semi-detached areas, because we talked about that briefly in the beginning. So here's the semi-detached areas and detached and terraced. Average price point in May compared to the year before is 4.1% up for detached. Semi-detached is 1.9% up. Terraced houses, average price is 162,000 now, up 2.8% year on year. Flats and maisonettes are 133,000 almost, up 3.3% year on year. See how flats and maisonettes are beginning to come up in price point now. In comparison, 3.3%, and I think they will continue to increase for a lot longer after maybe detached and semi-detached houses level off in terms of their price points, because they're more affordable as people look to downsize and obviously save on their budget, their household budget. Okay, so let's look at sales volumes, for example, and let's talk about this next. So sales volumes, the typical, the amount of time between the sale of a property and this is a qualification to this. The amount of time between the sale of the property and the registration of the information varies. The typical ranges from 2 weeks to 2 months, but it can be longer. So volume figures are for the most recent, as I said before, they go a couple of months back to make sure they take all the details into account, all the information. And that's why this information is back in March 2023. But again, this is quite revealing for the Fife area. Yeah, Craig, absolutely. Craig is a real estate agent as well over in the West Coast, and he says we saw that and it was backed up by surveyors not pushing back on valuations. Absolutely. You're absolutely right on that. So sales volumes by local authority, let's drill down on this. And I'll come into this graph here, and let's just drill. Now, overall, the average price in Scotland, the average sales transactions in Scotland is just about round about 8,000. The sales the year before is round about 8,200. That's neither here nor there, and that is very healthy for a market to have the sales in the same transactional volume levels, because that is what the health of the market is. It's not the price of the property, it's the number of property sales in the area. And because that's what drives everything. If the number of property sales drop dramatically, that means, therefore, there's probably more supply going to be coming on, therefore the price is probably going to drop, but also a lot of contractors won't have a lot more work to do because there'll be less houses actually being bought, therefore there'll not be as much money getting put in to their businesses in terms of home improvements and in terms of carpets and curtains and local contractors and local shops and retail shops like B&Q and stuff like that as well. And so that's why it's important to have these transactional numbers the same, so everything ticks along nice and steady. We love a steady market. It'd be brilliant just to have maybe a 2% increase every year, but also equally have the same sort of transactional volume every year to keep it nice and stable and steady. That would be a good market to be in, continuous. But look at Fife, for example. Here's a classic here. Fife last year was 498 properties actually sold in that month in March 2022. But this year, March 2023, there was 546 sold. Now, month on month, fair enough. That's that there is a comparative there where we've got more transactional volumes, which is actually really healthy. Again, there's more demand there as opposed to last year, according to this. So what does this tell us? Well, in an isolation of a month, it might not necessarily be the right thing to be, but it might actually tell us quite a lot if we look to the next month and take it from there and see how we get on. So right across the board, let's have a wee look at the right across here, Aberdeenshire. I'll scroll through these. If you've got your own area here, just look at your leisure. This column here is March 2023 versus March 2022 for transactional volumes. Clackmannanshire, for example, 68 versus 86, so less properties sold last month or March than in the year before. Dumfries and Galloway, you can see it's up in comparison. East Ayrshire, East Lothian up as well year on year. East Renfrewshire up, Falkirk up, Fife up, as I said, Highlands down just slightly, Inverclyde down as well, Midlothian, even Stevens, Moray down as well, and North Ayrshire, that's down as well. Okay, so it kind of tells you quite a lot, but more importantly, the whole level here are equal, even Stevens and equal. I could only apologise for the darkness. The sun's disappearing. It's obviously going down out here. I deliberately switched the lights off so it wouldn't do that. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to switch the lights on. You'll not see me in 2 seconds. And we're back in the room. Here we go. Lights on. The sun was shining through the window and taking the light off. Anyway, okay. So we are actually on the transactional levels. So what they got to say, the difference column has been removed from the table. They've done that this year because they don't want to go into the differences because it's minute in comparison. Sales volumes over the last 5 years, as I said, is in there as well. So sales volumes over the last 5 years, you want a quick look at that one. This is actually quite revealing as well, quite good. So overall, in Scotland, March 2019, 8,384 were actually sold. March 2020, pandemic, everything stopped, was 6,500. Then the boom happened in terms of the demand, and 12,200 got sold in the 2021. 2022 started to level off at 8,189, and then back into, as I said, March is just shy of 8,000 as well. So all there, when you look at the averages over that period of time, apart from the pandemic situation, it's kind of level out. It's kind of the same as it was before. So look at property status. So property status, transactions involving creation of new registers such as new builds, more complex, need time to process. That means it could take a bit longer. And this is actually quite interesting. This is a new builds. So this is a new build property, the average price versus the existing resold property. So in other words, just a property that's been up for a lot of years, similar average, but you can see the difference. Look at the price of a new build on average, 304,000, whereas the price of an existing resold property in Scotland is 177,000 overall. That's quite remarkable, and that's almost double for a new build. But that's primarily down to the amount of net zero requirements that are going into new builds now, and the higher building quality standards that are driving that price and driving that up as well. I mean, you could probably get the benefit as the resale market, the one below, will start to pick up a lot more as people see new builds being more unaffordable, possibly, and therefore thinking, well, okay, I can just go for a resale property. Okay, let's look at buyer status. This is actually quite interesting as well. Look at the first-time buyers since up to May 2023. First-time buyers, 154,000 on average they'll spend on buying a property. A former owner-occupier, in other words, somebody just moving or downsizing or relocating, is 232,000. Clearly, first-time buyers, that's quite a high level considering the first-time buyers exemption is up to, I think it's about 140 or 145,000. In terms of stamp duty, so just a wee bit beyond that now. Former owner occupiers, as I said, 232,000 is their level. The monthly change is 3.3% for first-time buyers, 2.7% for the existing resold. Since October 2017, releases amendments made in the estimation of model when calculating the provisional estimates. That's what the Land Registry goes on to say. Quickly, let's look at funding status. So funding status as well, this is actually quite an interesting one, cash versus mortgage. What is somebody with cash paying on average for a property? 175,000. What is somebody paying with a mortgage? 200,000. So ideally, in an ideal world, this tells you straight away that somebody with a mortgage will more than likely pay more for your property. But somebody with a mortgage that's maybe sold an existing house that had quite a lot of equity in it might pay even more for your property because they'll have a wee bit more in the equity they've got and they've built up in the previous property to go towards the mortgage that they would get, which is here in terms of buying that higher price point, as opposed to people that buy cash. You tend to have that person that actually says, look, I don't want a mortgage, I just want to maybe sell a big huge house, release all the equity, and actually just use that to buy the property. That's why that cash figure is possibly there as well in terms of that. So hopefully that's given you a wee insight into where the market is just now in terms of the overall Scottish house prices. But as I said, generally, very, very buoyant. Things are holding up quite well. Average price in Scotland, 192,000. Average salary in Scotland, around about according to the statistical office of National Statistics in Scotland, in January it was around about 32,000. So if you divide 192 by the 32, it's 6 times. 6 times average salary. Now, 6 times the multiplier is the perfect midpoint where it shows you that a market is extremely healthy. Now, somebody banded about at the recent housing summit when I was with the housing minister speaking on the same stage that in Scotland it's 1 in 9 times your average salary. Well, it's not, it's 1 in 6 because that's the key information. The information from the Office of National Statistics right here, the 192,000, versus also the information from the Office of National Statistics for average salary, which is 32,000, is 1 to 6 and not 1 to 9. And Fife, when you think about it, it's still 32,000 average salary according to the Office of National Statistics in Fife. So 171 divided by 32, it actually makes Fife at 5.35 times. Extremely affordable in comparison. Now, there is areas of Fife, because I know as soon as you say that, well, what would be East Newton, what would be St Andrews, they're out of the box. But there has to be a midpoint somewhere, and that midpoint is 171,000. And that is the midpoint, which actually, well, it's 170 actually. That is the midpoint where 50% of the houses are below and 50% of the houses are above. And it depends which one you fall into based on where you are right now with your existing house, or are you just starting out for the first time? I've heard a lot of people saying previously about how people going to get in the housing ladder if they're buying, you know, when they're buying the house for the first time, and it's that astronomical price of 170,000 for a property, and they can only afford 90,000. Well, you're not expected to live in a house that's considered to be your second move when you buy for the first time. You usually start off in an apartment or a more affordable house and then start trading up from there based on working towards that, based on saving as well, based on building up equity in your existing property and possibly getting salary increases because you're doing better at your work, or possibly someone else is introduced to the mix in terms of the home unit. And their earning as well, which can go towards that mortgage to get a bigger mortgage or buy a bigger property. That's how that works. Okay, so I hope that's given you good insight and information into the current housing market for Scotland and also for Fife as well. Until next time, guys, I'm Jim Parker for Fife Properties TV.